Welcome to The Heart of the Matter, an Our Place podcast, where we look at the issues surrounding homelessness, addiction, and mental health on the streets of Greater Victoria.
Hello, I'm Stephen Seltzer, Manager of Community and Corporate Partnerships for Our Place, and I'm pleased to welcome Ian Batey, Executive Director for the Police Victim Services of British Columbia, to today's Heart of the Matter podcast. Hi,
Good
Ian.
afternoon, Stephen. Great to be here.
Great. Awesome
Looking
having
forward
you.
to having a good conversation. So,
For sure. Ian, you're also past co-chair of the Greater Victoria Coalition to End Homelessness, presently sit on Our Place's advisory cabinet, and you are this year and last year the chair of Our Place's Hungry Hearts campaign.
yeah, they're terrific honors, Stephen, to be working with and contributing to all of the pieces that Our Place is involved in, and we have a great advisory cabinet. Really terrific group of people from quite a diverse range of businesses and other pursuits. And Hungry Hearts is a great experience. You know, we start what I call the philanthropic giving season in September with Hungry Hearts, and do a lot of really good things that I think helps food security and all of those aspects that continue to be challenges for organizations like Our Place.
Before we go further, I should mention that we respectfully acknowledge the Kwanghan-speaking people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations for their gracious hospitality while we provide programs and services within their ancestral lands.
Yeah, and Stephen, I'd like to similarly acknowledge, because the organization that I run, Police Victim Services, is actually headquartered here in Victoria, technically speaking, Saanich. And we also function as guests, I would say, on the traditional territories of many of the Lekwungen-speaking people. And in my particular area, that's the Sayout and the Sartlip, because our office is located on the Saanich Peninsula.
Great. Let's take a step back before we talk about Police Victim Services. We mentioned in your bio, there's a lot of advocacy work and a lot of community building in your background. Where does that come from?
Towards the end of my career with Greater Victoria Housing, I became quite enthralled and interested, frankly, in the philanthropic part of that organization. And part of the involvement that led me to the Greater Victoria Coalition to End Homelessness was an initial appointment through the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. And at that time, and clearly continues to this day, issues around affordable housing, homelessness, challenges associated with that, and not just in downtown Victoria, frankly, but throughout the community have certainly been central to that. I think one of the things that's really important for people like myself is absolutely knowing the connection between business and community, and for a place like Victoria, and when I say Victoria, I don't just mean the city of Victoria, I mean Greater Victoria. There is a gigantic community connection. There's a large number of people who share the interests of community as a central part of what they stand for, what they do, and or what they're prepared to do, volunteer or otherwise, in the community. So I've had it described to me that Victoria runs on community connections, and to be frank, I don't think that's a theory. I think that's a practical reality.
Excellent. And how does that lead you to where you are now with the Police Victim Services?
Well, it's interesting. I think it's fair to say I'm on my third career. I spent the initial part of my career for something over 30 years working for the province of British Columbia in a number of areas, including policing, law enforcement, strategic HR, a number of things like that. And then the other piece of it was, and then I moved on and had like a number of people with my kind of background, a small consulting service. And then I was attracted, as a matter of fact, through a community connection, somebody, I got a telephone call from somebody one day to say, oh, gee, I was approached by such and such. There's they're out there doing some recruitment of a job that I think you might be interested in doing. And one of the things that I've learned is that if somebody calls you or connects with you and says, hey, I think there's something that might be of interest to you, I put a significant amount of stock in that. So super quickly, PVSBC is the membership representative advocacy organization. Some would say the lobbyists, on behalf of 91 individual contracted organizations. About half are local governments, the others are generally not-for-profits, that have a contract with the province of British Columbia, Public Safety Solicitor General's Ministry, responsible for delivering police-based victim services around the province. Those 91 contracted agencies actually provide service in just over 100 locations in British Columbia, directly employing, like as permanent staff, about 350 people that are doing this really key critical incident response around anything that you could anticipate a 911 call would generate. So whether that work is intimate partner violence, unfortunately, and any one of a wide range of things that might be categorized as sudden death, along with things where there may not be any criminality or there may not be any death necessarily, but unfortunately there often is. That's the sector we represent. So after saying that, the connection to the affordable housing issue and homelessness is that the main drivers around homelessness, as you and I certainly know, Stephen, really comes from, excuse me, three very, in some cases, broad categories, in some cases quite narrow reasons. And one is mental health. Second one is addictions. And the third one, as we know, has become very, very prominent post-COVID, is what I would call poverty and economic challenges. And so the connection here is that probably the area not providing, but driving the majority of our cases, meaning the police victim services cases, is associated with those three things. Now, and the trauma, the impact, the behavioral changes, all of those types of things that are a product of those three things. Now, unfortunately, there are still assaults. Unfortunately, there's still murders. There's still buildings falling down. There's bank robberies and motor vehicle accidents. And I'm not suggesting that those are attributed to those three drivers. But I think as it relates to the interaction with our place, for example, and the pieces of work that our place does, we are absolutely seeing a significant increase in those drivers, and either directly related or having a partial involvement in the work that police victim services do.
Right, and you're not just working Victoria. This is all across British Columbia that is your purview. So you travel
Yes.
quite a bit throughout the province.
Yes.
Are these kinds of social issues, are you seeing different things in different regions, or is it all basically the same problem in every part of British Columbia you're traveling through?
So great question. I do travel extensively to around British Columbia, and I've probably been to easily 60 to 70 of those locations myself. And by far the common piece is homelessness is not a downtown east side issue. It's not just Pandora. There are downtown east side, Pandora Street, whatever it may be. We've certainly heard lots of reporting recently regarding many communities on Vancouver Island, Nanaimo being one. It is absolutely prevalent across the whole province. So so from our lens, issues that we talk about in terms of uh, core solutions, and I don't want this to be seen to be totally simplistic, but I think we know that at least two of the principal solutions that are available to us are substantial increase in available housing, and with a subset being the absolute mandatory requirement for supportive services to go along with that. Now, depending on where an individual may be in terms of their need for supportive housing, if your need is much more economic as opposed to the other two, you probably don't need supportive housing, or pardon me, supportive services in your building, right? However, if you are afflicted with addiction, and drug, alcohol, whatever that may be, or if you have pressing mental health issues, then having those services available, either on site or very, very readily available, is going to provide the opportunity for successful growth, development, healing, all of those kinds of things. So, so I'm now expressing more of a personal opinion than necessarily PVSBC, but when I am out and about, so to speak, in around the province, proactive communities and organizations that are working on those two principal elements. They're not solving absolutely everything. I get that, but the opportunity to heal the community, to heal the people in the community, to frankly, foster and develop increases in available, employable people, like all of those things are very, very central to the success that those locations are having.
Right. And so many of the solutions would come from federal, provincial governments.
Yeah.
But in terms of different municipalities and different cities having, maybe some different options or different charities, you might see some that are
Hmm.
doing better than others.
Yeah.
Some that may find a little more innovation, some that you've worked with, some that you've just seen,
Hmm.
heard stories about. Can it be like a very different tapestry depending on where you go, or because yes, you're right, poverty, homelessness, and everything
Yeah.
exist in every region, but maybe some are dealing with them in creative ways.
Yeah. And I think your term is, I don't know if you purposefully chose it, but I would say that it makes a whole lot of sense. It is a tapestry. And of course, we have responsibilities of the federal government, provincial government. And I think what we're saying, and this is not a political statement, this is strictly an observation. I think that the initiatives of the current government around, one, the level of investment, secondly, the policy types of direction that are coming, or they're more than coming, they're out there now. If you look at, for example, the Safer Communities Action Plan, it was originally thought to be principally a not necessarily a law enforcement initiative, but very much focused on the overall safety of communities across the province. You don't have to scratch the surface of that initiative very much to realize that a central aspect of it is housing, right? And so, I think it'll probably take some time, excuse me, for there to be a more of a complete utilization of the services that are available. I think a collateral part of that is also the community involvement, and also the local government involvement around critical aspects about zoning decisions, for example, density. I mean, clearly very, very complicated, and probably for some communities, very controversial issues to talk about. But I think we're seeing, and the level of effectiveness, I think, is going to be we'll be able to observe this over time. But I think the other piece that we're seeing here is the province being prepared to make statements and to start undertaking activities to at least get those types of issues on the table, so to speak.
Right.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Now, going back further, when you were co-chair of the Coalition Now Alliance to End Homelessness,
Yeah.
there must have been a lot of discussions. This is, I guess, 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, when I started, yeah.
Yeah, in terms of, potential steps or solutions around poverty and homelessness. Are there any that you heard then that you wish were implemented, or they're still talking about the same kinds of things around tables? What were you guys talking about 12 years ago? Like you didn't see probably this level of, you didn't see what outside sometimes of Pandora looks like
Right.
now back then, but you still saw signs of, increases in homelessness and increases in challenges people are facing around mental health. Have the discussions changed much, do you think?
I don't sit at that table anymore. However, strictly from an observation perspective, I think there are some challenges that are very, very persistent. And so I'm just going to reference the recent op-ed that Julian Daly, your CEO, as well as the CEO of
The conservatory.
thank you, the conservatory next door authored. And when I look at the four fundamental, I'll say solutions, there's certainly been conversations about all of those things on a continuous basis. I would say that a change that is happening, and I do know that, this is not the first op-ed that Julian has been involved in providing the public as it relates to the identification of the core group of people who frankly are preying on the people that are homeless. And the fear, the toxicity, both from a psychological perspective as well as obviously from a drug perspective, that's a significant core piece, and I really appreciated, and I will say support the call out that excuse me, that Julian and the other author put out in regards to the support required for the law enforcement community, frankly, and I'm paraphrasing here, to clamp down more vigorously, within the scope of authority and what the law allows, on that particular group. Because I remember talking at the coalition table about the safe injection site, for example, and the impact that it was anticipated that it was going to have in that part of Pandora Avenue, actually. I remember having conversations about the value associated with frankly, decentralizing the availability of those services. And it's been a while since I've even seen any data on that, but one of the aspects of the centralized service was that excellent service, super support having it, but the physicality and location, and because it was centralized, drew users, and I don't mean that from a negative perspective, but people that need the service of the safe injection site. It drew them from across the community because those people knew and felt and appreciated that they could go and do what they needed to do to maintain their lives, frankly, that it was going to be safe. I mean, by design, that's what it was all about. However, to hear that the level of preying, as in PREYING, of the people that use that by drug suppliers and that realm, for all intents and purposes, my opinion was defeating the purpose of having the center.
The drugs themselves have changed as well from the time when it was
yes,
first found out.
absolutely. I mean, it's the development in that is unfortunately really difficult. So those are maybe just a couple of examples. But I would say the pieces that are becoming even more focused with a lot more clarity is back to those two hallmark pieces: affordable housing provided, and we're not talking just shelters here. We're talking about a permanent form of safe housing, and as well as those supportive services. And so just a very short anecdote. One of the things that I do remember of the period of time that I was part of the Coalition to End Homelessness, and yes, new name, was I can remember sitting on the board. We always had at least one or two people with lived experience. And I remember one day, one of the people saying to me, Ian, it's kind of hard to get out there and get a job and do all those kinds of things when you're spending 12 hours a day trying to figure out where you're going to sleep tonight. That comment really, it impacted me. But on the other hand, one of the complaints or one of the observations that people sometimes say is, well, why isn't a homeless person working? Like, why don't they just get a job? Like, why don't they do whatever, right? And so I always connected back to that to say, well, in fact, that person is working pretty gosh darn hard. And the work and effort they're putting in is to try and figure out where they're going to live. And it's only after that housing is available that person can take those, 8, 9, 10 hours or whatever to, get their skills updated, be able to do that stuff, develop the confidence to be able to actually work. And I would anticipate that the people that are most successful coming out of work placement programs are probably the people that are housed.
I mean, there's also the idea, like, each day you and I go to work with, whatever baggage we have and so on. But the idea of the trauma that people are carrying with them day to day, who are forced to live on the streets for, whatever reasons that have gone back, sometimes right back to childhood and so on, to just assume people can, step away from that or overcome that in a day without the proper supports. I mean, that's certainly something I've learned coming into this field is you have no idea what's in someone else's shoes until you walk with them. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. And there is a connection to the police-based victim services world. One of the central core outcomes that victim services, and this is not limited to just police-based victim services, it includes community as well, is to ensure that the support and the services and the benefits are there for a person who has been, or a group of people or family or whatever, that has been impacted by one of these horrific events. Frankly, is very well supported during that first 48 to 72 hours. That's kind of the critical incident response period, as well as on an ongoing basis, because people, frankly, they don't recover at the same time. Like there's no kind of arithmetic model, for lack of a better term, in regards to when this is going to happen. There's no common time frame within which a person gets through that initial trauma and finds themselves dealing with the reality.
You've mentioned a few times we're interacting our place with the police victim services, and there's just so much the community underneath that you just don't even see. But I'd love for us to just give a quick plug for Hungry Hearts, of which you are
absolutely
leading us on. I'm hoping this is the fun side of being a community leader for you.
Yeah.
It's happening in September with the television broadcast, the auctions, and the gala. What are we hoping to see this year?
Well, again, we're going to have a terrific culinary competition. Did a great announcement a few weeks ago when all of the 8 chefs were in the same room and chose the protein that they're going to use for their individual offerings, and so that, that's a key part. You've mentioned the Czech broadcast, which will actually highlight actual pieces of the prep work that those chefs are going to be doing. But I think the underlying thing here is the cost of food, and particularly the costs associated with protein, have escalated to such an incredible height that represents a challenge for our place and your 365 days a year, 3 meals a day program that you offer. And to the best of my knowledge, those costs are now up a good at least 15 to 20 or maybe even 25% over last year. So this has provided a very cogent target focus for Hungry Hearts. So one of the reasons why we focused on the protein selection was because we're raising money for protein. And so at Ocean Point Resort, where the event itself is actually going to take place, there will be a very significant concentration of effort around raising absolutely as much money as we possibly can. That will go directly to supplementing our place's ability to be able to feed people in the way that they can, appropriate, nutritious, etc. meals, because in addition to housing, eating properly is a major part of that recovery process. We're looking to raise more than $215,000 through this particular event. People can participate through ticket sales, sponsorship, direct donations, and also we're encouraging people to come to the event. It's perfectly situated. It is what I call the first gala type fundraising event in our community in the fall philanthropic or giving season. So we're looking forward to lots of members of the public coming and absolutely having a good time and being well entertained and all of those things, but also to learn and hear more about what our place does and how its presence in the community is providing solutions, frankly, to a number of the issues we've talked about earlier.
That's great. And I found last year very gratifying because it was one of the first events after the public where we're invited to go back out again and interact. And it was people who hadn't been, in a group and hadn't socialized in so long. There was such an amazing vibe to it last year.
Yeah.
I think we're still going to see that. There's still people who haven't had much of an opportunity to get out and
Right.
schmooze with other business community leaders who always come to the event and just interact with each other, find out what's been going on. And that's the
Right.
part I'm really looking forward to is just having a bunch of our community out and about, not just for a good cause, but sharing excitement to be with each other.
I think it is an opportunity for people to really come together. I would just want to mention as well, apart from PwC and organizations like Odlum Brown, for example, you and your team, Stephen, have put together a terrific auction program, both live as well as silent auction. And I think I can say there are no holes on the list. Pretty much everybody's interests and maybe dreams and aspirations are met by that, and that's a very, very central part of what we're doing. But it all rotates around how can the community come together, how can the kind of focus that our place, I will say a combination of needs, but given the prominence, I would say, of our place in our community, it really provides a great opportunity to provide that kind of absolutely mission critical, essential support.
That's great, Ian. And you yourself are an essential resource in Victoria. So thank you so much for joining us today, and
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate all of your work.
You've been listening to the Heart of the Matter podcast. For more information about Our Place and the vital programs and services provided to the Greater Victoria community, please go to www.ourplacesociety.com. Our Place is a registered BC charity. You can donate by visiting the website or by calling 250-940-5060. Help us to bring hope and belonging to those in need.